Hello and welcome. My name is Xar, and today we're gonna be talking about Ragnarok Online 3. The Pioneer test ran today on the 12th of August for a couple of hours, and I was been watching some VODs around, overanalyzing maybe a little bit too much to see what the game is actually looking like. So let's get right into it. First, let's talk about what I actually enjoyed about this Pioneer test, which is gonna be short. There isn't really much to say, but it's basically the visuals. The visuals looked really nice. The revamp, like the fresh coat of paint that they gave the cities, the sprites, the mobs, and the skills. The skill effects really look really sharp, very fluid. It looks like a very pretty game. Exactly what I would expect from a new RO game. And to me, actually, the strong point of this Pioneer test, from what we could see, the Guild League. The Guild League was really cool, very chaotic. You could see that the classes retained their personality. We only had 6 classes for this Pioneer test. Hopefully, we will be getting more as the game launches. But it just looked really nice, really sharp. The chaotic movement of everyone just trying to capture the flags around to get points for their team. The PvP seemed really cool. All the numbers raining down from everywhere just looked really nice. And it kind of gave that same vibe back from BGs or the War of Imperium as well. And it looked just really cool to see. And I hope they just improve on it and make it even cooler. But now let's get into the actual meat and potatoes of what RO3 actually looks like and the systems that we have in the game. So let's start with the shiny new systems, which is resonance or echoes. These little guys give you stats, and if you combo them in the right way, they're gonna give you even more stats, like a resonance effect, which sounds cool at first, right? But at the same time, we have to keep in mind they are upgradable as well, which almost certainly means you're gonna need special materials. And the way you get echoes is from the 10-player dungeons, which is limited. You won't. During the Pioneer test, they only had one reward claim. Maybe it's due to the Pioneer test, the way the Pioneer test ran, since it was only for a couple of hours. But it seems like it is a weekly thing, and you can only claim your rewards once. I'm not very fond of weekly tries and weekly rewards and weekly amount of rewards. It just reminds me a lot of gacha games in general. And in this case, it's even worse because your echoes, they run on stats, which means you're gonna be running a lot on RNG, right? So you're gonna be at the mercy of RNGs, which is not great. I get that they probably don't want people finishing all the content in a short amount of time, but it just feels like a cheap way of stretching out content, and even more when you top it off with RNG. And on top of that, when you complete a dungeon, you're also faced with an auction for the rewards where you gotta bid against your own teammates to see who gets one of the items, right? There's a list of items that they're gonna be going through bids. And if you're poor, that just means see you next week, or you're gonna need enough money to outbid your companions too, which is just a shame, right? Or maybe you get lucky that everyone just passed on an item, and again, from RNGs, you got that set item, right? Which is insane. And besides the weekly reward for 10-player dungeons, there are also daily quests, which to me is just a player trap. It makes the game feel like a chore that you have to do daily. Every day you have to log in to do the daily quests. It just seems like a way of keeping people playing every day, right? But at the end of the day, it makes a lot of people quit as well, or not even start the game. Since if you miss a couple of those days, you feel like you are already behind, or you just don't feel like doing intended content just to get scraps, right? Just to get nothing. In this case, in the Pioneer test, they got the quote-unquote premium reward for the Pioneer test, which was the blue gems, the blue shards, which we don't know if it's gonna be like a premium currency, but it is used for a lot of things inside of the test. We don't know what the actual rewards for the daily quests are gonna be at launch. Just from the fact that we have daily quests, it also means there's probably some type of currency tied to it. If we take like a Genshin or ZZZ or Wuthering Waves, for example, you always get that easy currency, like it would be the Zenny for Ragnarok, and also the premium currency, which is used for your pulls or your gacha system, which is worrisome already, right? Then let's talk mob spawns. In OGRO, the world just felt like it was really alive, right? Because the monsters were just roaming around the map, like everywhere. They didn't have like a fixed spawn point, and you could just find monsters around, right? Sometimes they would be chasing you around because maybe you mobbed way too many monsters and you're just running for your life, right? But in RO3, that's a no-go. Like mobs, they just spawn in tiny little groups in specific spots and they just keep respawning all the time. And that's probably due to the auto combat aspect. It works just like in Ragnarok Origin, which you can set like a certain distance for your auto combat to work, and it's just gonna be farming for you. So bots are freaking legal now, boys. Bots are back in the menu, and your PC is gonna be grinding better than you are. To me, this is just such a freaking letdown, and it takes away so much from what RO actually was, and it just changes the experience entirely. Just having the auto combat is already such a freaking shame, but it's probably due to also the mobile aspect of the game, but it's just so cheap, and it just takes away from the idea of grinding for your own things and just exploring the maps. And even MVPs, which were just spawning around maps and you could just face them, or maybe just get your ass beat because you're trying to level and an MVP just happens to be around and just one-shot you. Now they are a challenge which can only be done a couple of times a day, taking away yet another awesome feature from the OG to replace for some time-gated bullshit. Which also, if we look at that little tag that's shown on the top of the MVP, it says equipment, which means you probably can get equipment from that MVP, right? Which apparently is also now forged. And it has tiers. You need a set amount of materials and shards to be able to craft a piece, which is also tied to RNG. Since they can also come with multiple different type of affixes that give you extra stats, and in also 3 different rarities that also have more or less affixes and extra skills tied to that equipment as well. So it's basically RNG on top of RNG on top of RNG. So you just be endlessly crafting a piece of gear until you finally get a semi-decent one that you can actually use. And it doesn't seem like we will be dropping equipment anymore. Not 100% sure on this, but just from the crafting part, it just seems like it. And also cards seem to have just completely lost their magic from the original game, since now they not only can be upgraded, just like in a ton of mobile versions of RO, but you also have a lot more slots in your equipment. Like dual wield weapons will have 4 slots, armor has 2 slots, and accessories have 2 slots, and so on, right? You can also remove them at will, and you need materials to upgrade cards as well, so you need card shards. I didn't get to see where you get those shards from, but it just seems like another pointless grind fest. Like, again, I don't mind grinding if it's for something cool, like a cool piece of gear, a cool equipment, or a nice card that's gonna complement my build. But if it's just like the rest and it is tied to some time-gated content, just sign me out, man. I'm not doing it. And let's talk maps, or rather the lack of maps. Like in classic RO, we had hundreds of them, right? Hundreds of maps everywhere. And now right here, you can see the map for all RO3. It seems like it has been shrinked down so much. You can literally go from Prontera to Gaffin in 2 teleports, or like from Prontera to Morok in 3 TPs. I don't know, it just feels so shrink down. The game is just smaller. It doesn't feel like if I want to go from a city to another city, it doesn't feel like I'm going on an adventure anymore. I'm just pressing a button, which you can also press inside of the minimap button and auto walk there, and just getting places. It takes away from the adventure of playing Ragnarok, right? At least for me. And not only that, but cities have no interior whatsoever. At least we saw none of them during the Pioneer test. All the vendors and quest givers and NPCs are just sitting outside of what their usual spots would be, and you just talk to them. Maybe it is a game is not ready thing, just the Pioneer version of the game, and maybe it would be added later. But honestly, since this game is also going into mobile, I start believing it just won't have any. Combat-wise, there is still still some time cast, but it's basically on a diet. It's heavily reduced, and you're just spamming away skills, and the only setback that you have is due to animation time, the animations to cast the skills. Also, in one of my previous videos, I said I was hoping the little lock on the side of the bar would mean that we could switch between bars so we could have access to more skills. Wrong again, man. Not only that, but they also reduced a lot of skills into being passive effects for other skills. For example, Angelus is a part of Bless, so if you use Angelus, you also get Bless effect. Or like, for example, Sword Aura or Sword Enhancement, and a lot of skills have just now been reduced to being a passive skill for another skill. And also on the skills, during a dungeon, you can't change your active skills on your bar. You're locked to the 5 you chose, and that's about it. You know, if you forgot one of your skills or you have the wrong element skills during a 10-player dungeon, you can't change. You're just gonna have to wipe and start over again, which is, again, something so basic, and I hope they change it. And some people maybe will like this, but I personally enjoyed a lot of the aspect of having that shit ton of skills, that huge bar with a lot of skills that you could use at your own will and at the right time too, and also using consumables on the bar, which apparently are also not available to be put on the bar for RO3. On the social part, there is a world chat on the side, on the left bottom side, as we can see here, which I get it. It's a very every MMO nowadays has it. It just brings a more social feature to the game. But I also miss just chatting with people that are close to me, right? I can also send a PM or like a party message or something I like. But it just seems like that's also gone. There's no chat appearing above your head. You can we didn't see anyone opening like a chat box or something similar to that, which is, again, just a shame to see. One of the social features that made the adventure so much more immersive gone. Also, and this one hurts, there is a collection system too. It is locked, so we can't really see what's inside of it. But if we take examples from the other mobile versions like Labyrinth, Eternal Love, or Origin, when you collect items, cards, equipments, and many types of items, it boosts your stats depending on the collection and how far your collection has gone, right? Again, straight from mobile. It's just another way of boosting your combat power, which they didn't show under the equipment part of the character, but if you hover over your equipment, you can see the rating for that equipment, right? So basically it is combat power in another way, in another language, disguised. And it just feels like you have to grind endlessly for a bunch of useless things, just like in a Ubisoft game with like 1,000 freaking markers around the map. Now you're gonna have collections, which you're gonna have to do because it just gives you more power, which is insane and cheap. Also, apparently there are already 3 types of currency just in the Pioneer test. The usual Zenny, which we all know and love, some blue crystal, which is the quote-unquote premium currency we saw them use during the Pioneer test, and a third one which we didn't really get to see what it actually is and what it is used for. What do you need 3 currencies for, right? It just feels like a way to bamboozle players and eventually get them into spending. And not to mention card shards, equipment blueprints, which is also specific to which type of equipment. Weapon, cloak, accessory, armor, and so on, or even echo shards, and who knows how many more, right? It's just an endless spreadsheet of different currencies, which I'm gonna have to keep to play this game. And this is only talking about what we could see and access during the Pioneer test, since there were a couple of things that were still unavailable, like pets. Like, what the fuck are pets? Which, if it's anything like RO Origin, it will be just as vital as your equipment, if not more so, because that would used to be like a huge gacha system inside of RO Origin, and it just gave you so much combat power as well, which, bleh, disgusting. And also equipment growth, which scares me even more just thinking about another layer of RNG on top of the already insane RNG for equipment, right? And also Divine Totem, which I honestly have no idea what it is for, but I don't want to speculate. Also, they use a different type of movement. This game is based mostly on a WASD movement. You also have the classical RO movement with the point and click, but it seems like it's a feature that they thought about later on, because it doesn't work the same way as it used to work in RO Origin. I mean, in RO, it's you move with your right click, and that also means you can't turn your camera at the same time because you're going to be using your left click to cast your skills. So no idea how that's actually going to work. Maybe they're going to still patch it. Apparently there were some other issues with people not being able to access certain places using the classical way of moving, and WASD seemed like the intended way to play. Also, again, probably because of mobile. Now, from all we talked here, I never really mentioned pay to win, right? Because we didn't really get to see any pay to win mechanics. We didn't see anything that slapped in your face. This is gonna pay, you're gonna have to pay to get this, right? But at the same time, if we think about different types of currencies, endless types of shards for cards, for equipment, and upgrading materials for echoes, and then you have pets, and then you have I don't know, there's just an endless list that we could fill with all the different types of things that they could monetize in this game. Not saying they will, but knowing Gravity, knowing RO developers, yeah, it hurts, right? Which is a shame. It really saddens me to say this, because I really wanted RO3 to be a worthy successor of RO, which doesn't seem like. Like, again, the visuals look great, the dungeons look amazing, the 10-player dungeons look like they play really well, and all the mechanics seem like they are very tight, you know, like the game just looks really cool. But if we take all the systems in account, it just feels like this game is going to be a huge cash grab. And if you don't have enough combat power to follow up on your dungeons, or on doing your MVPs, or doing your weekly bosses and whatnot, then you are gated not only in time, but gated in power, which also means you're gated in money, which is just a shame, right? It is what it is. I want to feel excited about this game, but right now I just feel it just feels like such a big letdown. There's still gonna be some more Pioneer tests happening during the week. I'm gonna still keep my eyes out if any other new features are gonna be added, but that's it for today on what we got for this Pioneer test. I can't say I'm very happy about this, but let's keep our eyes out and maybe be hopeful about this, right? Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. It helps the channel so much. Apparently 99% of you guys are not subscribed to the channel. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subscribers, so help me out reach that goal, and I'll see you in the next one. That's it for me. Czar out.